Get out and divorce, you NEET. My mother-in-law spat at me as I continued to pay off hundreds of thousands of dollars of my husband's debt every month. My father-in-law, who passed away, was always kind to me. Out of respect for his memory, I silently continued to pay off the debt. You're just like a jobless person, always on your computer or phone. If you have so much free time, get another job. It's better to be jobless than to be like her. She's a wicked woman hoarding all our money. Despite being the main earner in the company entrusted to me by my father-in-law, my foolish mill and husband belittled me and even betrayed me. Fine, I'll leave. There's no need to endure this any longer. I immediately agreed to a divorce and collected my belongings. Leaving my clueless mill and husband with their debt, I moved out. What awaited them was, my name is Iris. I'm 33 years old, married 9 years ago, and we don't have kids yet. I run a small printing company with my husband, George, which we inherited from my father-in-law. 3 years ago, my father-in-law passed away. A few years before that, we started living with George's parents to help with the business. George had been helping his father since graduating college, and we rented a place near his family home. When my father-in-law wanted to retire due to his age, we agreed and moved in with them. I quit my job at a web design company to help with the printing business. Currently, it's just the two of us running the business. When my father-in-law was around, he had hired a female employee, but I was able to handle the work on my own, so he let her go. When my father-in-law was healthy, we lived together without any problems, but after losing my father-in-law, who was the main pillar, various distortions began to appear. Are you planning to just laze around the house all day again? My mill would always pick on me. I wasn't just playing around, which made her comments all the more frustrating. While George operates the printing machines and delivers the products, I mainly handle customer and data management. Sometimes, I even correct the data if there are errors. My mill doesn't know that my data correction skills have been well received and have increased our sales. Satoshi is not familiar with computers and cannot operate them at all, so like my mother-in-law, I support him behind. Before my father-in-law passed away, my mill had always been uninvolved in the business, so she probably thinks I'm just playing when I'm working on the computer. But lately, her accusations have become more intense, and the reason for this is shaking our family. It seems to be related to a former employee named Mia. Mia and George have been friends since childhood and were in the same class throughout school. After my father-in-law's funeral, Mia started visiting our printing company frequently. She and my mill have always been close. I heard that the reason we hired Mia was because my mill strongly recommended her to my father-in-law. However, he used to criticize Mia, saying she was always slacking off and made many mistakes when she did work. I worked with her for a few days and was shocked by her carelessness. She couldn't even operate a computer properly and made many errors even in simple calculations. My father-in-law had to write important documents by hand, which I later took over. Her internet history was filled with inappropriate sites and dating apps. I never really liked her, and it seems my father-in-law felt the same way. It seems she played a significant role as my MIL's confidant, but she didn't seem to have a good impression of my hardworking father-in-law. The problem is George's position. When my father-in-law was still alive and well, he took his job seriously, but recently he has started to complain to me as much as my mother-in-law. You have it easy, don't you? You're just playing on your computer all day, while it feels like I'm the only one working. George remarked, not only my mill but now even my husband accuses me of having it easy and playing around. This must be Maya's influence. I was never accused of such things when my father-in-law was still alive. Now, it's just my mill, George, and me living together. I just want to protect this printing company that my father-in-law left us, but things aren't going smoothly, and it's stressful. Thanks to my data correction skills, our orders and sales have increased. However, the business is still in a tough spot. The reason why, my mill and George's extravagant spending habits. My mill has always been a big spender, constantly buying luxury brands, and she doesn't stop no matter how much I warn her. Ever since George became the CEO after my father-in-law passed away, his spending has become more noticeable. Even though it's just the two of us running the company, he's now being praised as the boss or second generation, and it seems he's getting a bit too big for his boots. He started going out drinking almost every night, and with no kids around, even my mill dines out every evening. Despite the increase in sales, the business remains precarious because both my mill and George are spending recklessly. On top of that, George took out a loan from the bank for a new business venture without consulting me, and our sales aren't covering the repayments. Of course, the loan money is gone, and he won't tell me what he spent it. He probably took out the loan so casually just because he wanted money to play around with, now that he has the title of CEO and the company sealed that my father-in-law left him. Seeing George spending the loan money and partying, my mill probably misunderstood and thought we had a lot of income, so she started spending just as recklessly. It's a terrifying downward spiral. The repayment amount of the loan that Satoshi has used for fun is several $100,000 per month. I'm the one handling the finances, so I'm the one making the payments, but their spending doesn't stop, so I finally took drastic measures. I explained our current financial situation and put both my mill and George on an allowance. It's a simple fact that you can't spend money you don't have, but the two of them couldn't accept it and took unbelievable actions. Mia told me our company is making a lot of money. Aren't you hiding and embezzling it? George questioned. Mia said there should be cash and life insurance money left by my father. Where is it? My mill added. To think they consult Mia, a former employee, and believe her words over mine. Either they truly believe her, or they're just picking out the parts of her story that suit them to demand money. Either way, Mia, a former employee, was a nuisance and a threat to me now. My marriage with George has grown cold lately. We had initially discussed having a child before I turned 30, but nowadays no such atmosphere. Despite working my fingers to the bone, my mill and George waste our earnings. They dine out every night, leaving me to deal with the leftovers alone. I'm increasingly frustrated with my mill and George, but there are two reasons I'm enduring the current situation. One is my hobby, social media. When I posted self-deprecating comments about my current home and work situation, they became surprisingly popular. Another day of dealing with leftovers alone. I'd post as Iris, and it became a good stress reliever, and even gained me more followers. The bigger reason, though, is that my father-in-law had directly asked me to take care of things. While he was alive, he often told me, Iris, I'm entrusting this printing company to you. He trusted me with all the company's finances and let me handle customer relations freely. He must have had a lot of faith in me to entrust me with the company's finances, where I could see all the money movements. Thinking of my father-in-law's wishes, I felt bound by a sense of duty to maintain this printing company. He treated me as family, as a daughter, and as a colleague in work. On days when George and my mill were out having fun, and it was just my father-in-law and me working late, he'd often say, I'm sorry for the trouble my foolish wife and son cause. Iris, you don't have to put up with those idiots. I want to continue protecting this printing company that he built from scratch, as a testament to my gratitude towards him. You're a NEET, aren't you? You've been fiddling around with your computer and smartphone all the time, so if you have free time, go back to work. While I was checking and correcting a client's data because the text wasn't outlined, George nitpicked at me again. Forgetting to outline text is a common mistake, but if left unchecked, the text can get distorted. Asking the client to correct it can delay the delivery, affecting the deadline. It's quite insulting to be called jobless when I'm doing such crucial work. At least being jobless is better. She's a wicked woman hoarding all our money. My mill chimed in, supporting George's criticism. It's clear that their main goal is money so they can continue their lavish spending. But calling me jobless or wicked is just plain slander. Still, I tried to explain the company's situation to them again. What happened to your father's personal savings? There should still be some left, my mill questioned. George and my mill had already spent all of my father-in-law's savings. Not a penny was left. That's why George had to take out a loan in the company's name. Their ignorance is astounding. He worked so hard, he must have had a secret account. Hand it over. She continued. Indeed, my father-in-law was a diligent and honest man. He didn't do any aggressive tax-saving measures, and he used his own income to cover my MIL's extravagant expenses. That's why he didn't have much savings. And now, after spending all of it, they're talking about a non-existent secret account. Given my father-in-law's character, the idea of a secret account is impossible. To me, it felt like they were disrespecting him, and my resentment towards the two of them grew. I wonder if continuing to work with my money-hungry mill and husband is the best way to honor my father-in-law. Amidst these troubling farts, one day, I witnessed a shocking scene. It was a Friday night. A regular client requested a print sample on matte paper for their new product catalog. They wanted to finalize the data over the weekend, so they needed the sample that day. But George had gone out drinking in the evening. Since they were longtime clients and it was just a magazine-like print sample, I decided to deliver it myself. On my way back, I was taken aback by the sight of a couple walking ahead of me. It was George, arm in arm with a woman. And walking beside them, almost clinging to them, was my mill. Unable to comprehend the situation, I discreetly followed them from a distance. The woman was getting very close to George, and when she looked up to talk to him, I recognized her. It was Mia, our former employee. Realizing it was Mia, my mind went blank, and I just stood there, frozen. The backs of the three happy talkers fade into the distance in a small way. I watched the three of them, chatting happily, until they disappeared into an high-end steakhouse. I was in shock. I don't even remember how I got home after that. When I came to, I was sitting in front of my home computer. My mind was filled with the scene I had just witnessed, and I couldn't stop thinking about it. No matter how I looked at it, George and Mia didn't seem to have a normal relationship. Even if our marriage had cooled off, witnessing such betrayal is unsettling. If George is deeply involved with Mia, it's only natural he'd trust her more than me. But what's hard to accept is that my mill was with them today. I knew that Mia and my mill were old acquaintances and got along well, but seeing them happily together while George and Mia were so close, could it be that their relationship is approved by my mill? While I find such a notion absurd, if it's true, then all the actions and words of my mill and George after my father-in-law's passing make sense. I wanted to continue protecting the printing company entrusted to me by my father-in-law, but I didn't know what to do. Even when Saturday came, neither George nor my mill returned. They came back only in the afternoon of the following day, Sunday. They explained that they had bumped into each other downtown and decided to go to a spa together. Just the two of you. Wasn't Mia with you as well? I calmly voiced my suspicion, and they both became furious, perhaps because I hit the nail on the head. What's it to you about Mia? She's just concerned about me and Mom. George retorted, that's right. Mia knows that you're trying to hoard all of Dad's savings since she used to work here. My mill added. Just pointing out that they were likely with Mia made both of them extremely emotional. If you're the kind of woman who'd hoard Dad's savings, then we should divorce. Get out and divorce, you NEET. Having been told to divorce and leave by both of them, I replied, fine, I'll leave. And promptly exited the scene. I had packed my belongings the day before and had them shipped to my parents' house. I could come back later for the larger items. Right now, I just wanted to get away as quickly as possible. Even if you come back crying, there's no place for you. George's parting shot pierced my back. I bit my lip and clenched my fists in response. A week later, George contacted me to sign the divorce papers, and I was summoned to finalize the handover of my father-in-law's company. George, my mill, and even Mia were all present. Here, sign this. Hurry up and sign it. Before I could even check the divorce papers George handed me, my mill urged me on. Don't even think of apologizing now. You should be grateful to George and Mom that you're not being sued. Mia said with misplaced confidence. Her comment irked me, but I didn't want to seem hesitant. After confirming George's section was filled out, I silently signed my part. When I looked up after signing, all three of them were smirking. Now, hand over all the company's bank books, George demanded. I took them out from the drawer of the computer desk I used and handed them over. George eagerly opened the bank book, with my mill and Mia leaning in from either side to peek. Their previously smug expressions changed instantly. What's this? The first to speak after seeing the bank book balance was Mia. Isn't this wrong? My mill glanced up at George and murmured. George shook his head at his mother-in-law and asked, Hey, what is this? What do you mean by a balance of $30? That's the company's entire assets. Sure, there might be some deposits at the end of the month, but as I've explained multiple times, our expenses exceed our income, so there's hardly any balance left. I replied matter-of-factly. That can't be right. We're printing and delivering every day. It doesn't make sense for there to be no money. George retorted, "True, our monthly revenue is around $30,000. However, printing involves using multiple machines, including cutting and plate-making machines. Just the lease for these machines costs over $10,000 a month. Our electricity bill is incomparable to household usage. We also have loans for the delivery trucks and forklifts. The bank loan we took out after my father-in-law passed away costs us over $3,000 a month, and the revenue just seems to vanish. On top of that, the personal loans that my Mill and George frivolously took out cost over $2,000 a month, which I've been managing and repaying out of my pocket. So, I've been covering our living expenses as well." I reiterated these facts and added, "Now that I won't have to cover your repayments, I'll have an extra $2,000 or more to spend each month. It'll be a relief." "Don't lie. You can't be working this hard every day and have no money," George shouted, refusing to understand. "Even if you shout, nothing will change. That's because, while we do have revenue, you and Mill have already squandered it with your loans. Once those are paid off, we might save around $5,000, don't you think? It'll be tight during the repayment period, but that's no longer my concern. They'll learn the hard way." "When will the repayments end?" Mia asked, being the practical one. Answering seemed tedious, but not answering would lead to an endless loop. "The bank loan has 3 more years, and the personal loans George and Mill took out will take over 5 years. I replied curtly. Mia, likely in it for the money, was visibly disappointed. "So, we'll be running at a loss for the next 3 years. Mia, who likely was after the money, clearly showed her disappointment. "Given the current situation, yes," I coldly replied, but Maya's understanding finally moved the conversation forward. "What about hidden bank accounts? Your father-in-law must have had some, right, Mia?" My Mill, trying to appease Mia, asked. Mia, probably having given this idea to my Mill, responded, "Yay, didn't the previous owner have a hidden account?" Urged by Mill, Mia, with wide eyes, pressed on. "Such a gold digger. I've never heard of or seen any while he was alive. Why don't you all look for it?" I had no idea why Mia was so insistent on a hidden account. She's probably watched too many TV shows. Among the 3 who were gradually coming to grips with reality, George finally voiced a realistic question. "Hold on. How were you able to manage the deficit all this time?" At last, he got to this question. Well, I explained in detail how I managed our living expenses and covered the deficit with my personal income. I have a blog called Small Factory Struggles on social media with over 1 million followers. I receive a substantial advertising revenue every month, which is deposited into my personal account. Apart from the printing company's financial statements, I had enough personal income to require an individual tax return. If you look at the books later, you'll see that the company's supplementary expenses are loans from me personally, so the company has an obligation to repay. Please consult with an accountant or lawyer. That was the main point I wanted to convey today. Setting aside any divorce settlement, I will be a creditor going forward. I took care of the family's living expenses because they were family, but from now on, it's none of my business, and I naturally expect to be repaid the money I lent. George, even if you're the CEO, you're no different from a poor person with this situation." Mia, quickly grasping the situation, looked down on George. "George, I can't marry you if it's like this. Bye." Mia turned away briskly, intending to leave, but George and Mill chased after her, trying to hold her back. It's okay. We have enough sales, so if we ask the bank for additional financing, it'll be fine." "Yes, Mia, my husband's company is reputable, so there's nothing to worry about. Whether Mia gets fed up or they reconcile, it's up to her." The 3 of them were engrossed in their discussion, so since I'd said all I needed to, I decided to leave. A few months later, it seems George and Mill went to the bank to discuss additional financing but were declined, and it seems that they reluctantly reduced the monthly payment amount by rescheduling and extended the repayment period. Whether it was as expected or just pathetic as an ex-husband. A few weeks after that discussion, George and Mill visited my parents' home. "Iris, I was a fool. The company can't function without you. Please come back." George pleaded with me, prostrating himself on the ground in front of the entrance. "Iris, I'm truly sorry. I've warned him too, but could you please help George out?" Mill also bowed deeply next to George. They probably hit a financial wall and swallowed their pride to visit, but it was too late. My parents didn't even let them step inside, so the conversation took place right at the entrance. Neither I nor my parents could ever forgive them. You said everything was fine because you had enough sales. Why don't you consult with Mia? I coldly brushed them off and they left, heads hung low. My parents sprinkling salt behind them as they left was both comical and refreshing. Just rescheduling wouldn't solve the problem. Most of George's company's clients stopped doing business with him and approached me directly. I had sent a farewell email from my personal address when I left the company, so many clients who could modify their data approached me with continued requests. George, you can't handle computers, couldn't possibly retain clients. I signed an exclusive contract with a major printing company as a personal design office, so there's no problem with arranging printing. Rumor has it that Mia is now ignoring George. Both George and Mill have become gaunt, seemingly unable to even eat properly. I heard there were numerous complaints from the few remaining clients, and even cases where penalties were incurred. Their downfall, whether it's karma or not, is truly remarkable. As I was getting used to my new life, I visited my father-in-law's grave. I prayed in front of the tombstone, recalling the words he entrusted to me. Iris, I'm leaving the printing company to you. But if you can't stand my foolish wife and son, you can cut ties. They're not bad people, but they're the type to drown in money. Perhaps my father-in-law had a premonition that this would happen. I sincerely apologized for not being able to protect his company and reported the recent communication from my lawyer. Father-in-law, it seems inevitable that George's company will go bankrupt. The lawyer approached me about buying it. What should I do? Buying the company would cost hundreds of thousands of dollars, but it's a small price for me now. It might be worth offering as a subsidiary line to the major printing company I'm contracted with. If George changes his ways, hiring him as a worker might be worth considering, and perhaps it would be a way to repay my father-in-law. But I'm sure my father-in-law in heaven would shake his head and probably answer like this: Iris, you don't have to force yourself.